The title of the next presentation this afternoon is Moving Beyond IPD merely relationship and building certainty and improving capital efficiency beyond a single project. And we're delighted to invite to the stage the moderator for our next panel, Pam Roebel. Pam is Chief Strategist with THP Limited, and she's had greater than 20 years of career experience providing growth and positioning strategies for professional service companies. She's joined by Tyler Anderson, Director of Engineering at Procter & Gamble, Greg Rambo, who is the Project Director of Miller-Valentine, Andrew Rhodes, who is Business Development Lead with Southland Industries, Jason Martin, Principal with THP, and Jim Moroney, who is Senior Project Manager with SteelFab. So, Pam, we're going to invite you to take it away at this time as you help us explore the advantages of IPD and how we can maximize value out of that approach to capital projects. Thank you, Pam.
Thanks, Greg. Well, I had this whole thing that I was going to talk about this VUCA world, and then you guys changed the description of it on me, so that's pretty great. Either way, IPD works with the definition that we're using for VUCA. The antithesis of what we used to call it, and the exact demonstration of what we're calling it now. So before we get into this, I do want each panelist to say your name and what your role is on the team so everybody gets an idea of the perspective that you're bringing when you're talking. Tyler, do you want to jump?
Sure. So Tyler Anderson, I'm with Procter & Gamble, I guess the owner in this conversation. I've been with P&G for about 14 years, all of it in our engineering organization, mainly going from large project to large project. For us, large projects are typically $30 to $300 million range. And so for this conversation, I've been doing Lean IPD projects for about 6 years, 3 different main projects, 2 of them with an IFOA contract, and 1 of them as a just design build project.
Jason?
Jason Martin, THP Limited, Structural Engineering.
All right. Andy Rhodes with Southland, mechanical partner on the team and sometimes lean facilitator.
Greg Rambo with Miller-Valentine, SPM. So I've done a couple projects with Tyler with P&G, so we've been building our relationship together through some of those projects here.
Jim Moroney-SteelFab. I am the structural steel fabricator.
All right, great, cool. Thank you very much, and let's jump into it. So you guys did quite a bit of deliberate team building during the first projects that you did together. So Greg, what were some of the actions that were taken to build the team and build trust?
Well, the best way to build trust is really to build your relationships. And it's not just a professional relationship. You want to also build a personal relationship. And the best way to do that is really spending time together. And so as a project team, when we first got started on some of our early projects, we were very intentional about getting together and team building. We'd schedule dinners together, or we had a fishing trip or Topgolf, or do whatever we could to really push some of that intentional team building on top of the co-location. So we would set up an office or a big room for our project team to really spend, call it our home, and spend a lot of time together working, doing some of those personal team building. And as you grow in those types of intentional team building, you get into some of the spontaneous team building, where you'd go from, you go out and grab lunch together, or go grab a drink after, or maybe even turn into a karaoke night. And if you can sing Piano Man in front of some of your team members, you've really gotten some good relationship built there. So that really builds a lot of that interpersonal relationship and builds that trust that it changes your attitude towards your team members from, that's not my job, into I want to take care of my friends on these projects and make sure we're all looking out for each other.
Yeah. Tyler, anything from the owner's perspective?
Yeah, so as Greg pointed, for us, for P&G, we set the tone early on when we actually co-located to the engineering firm's office in Cincinnati. So me and 4 other technical engineers had a permanent desk at the engineering firm's office. And that's where we had our big room. We had our pull plan all up on the wall, and most of our monthly design meetings were done there. Our model reviews were done there for the first probably 3 quarters of the project. And then we transitioned that to the electrical firms, the trade partners' offices in DC for several months, and then finally on site at the construction office in West Virginia. But I think by going to different locations, we set the tone that everybody's equal. We give everybody the opportunity to work in a space that was comfortable for them, a safe space for them, and that really helped with our collaboration.
So everybody can take note about Piano Man for later in the evening with
My
Greg.
flight leaves early tonight.
Okay, so stemming from the aspect of team, IPD has a huge emphasis on trust. So Andy, how did establishing trust help build transparency?
I think it's huge for our IPD teams. You know, one of the advantages I see with IPD is the ability to work together to solve problems, truly work together with your teammates. And it's a whole heck of a lot easier to do that when you've got a foundation of trust, when you spend the time doing the team building. You can't solve problems you don't know about on your teams, right? You need people who are willing to stand up, be vulnerable, and say, I've got a challenge on the project, or we just made a mistake, or we're behind schedule for some reason. It's a whole heck of a lot easier on your team to do that when you know the people around you are going to rally around you, support you, and not just place blame.
So taking that trust further, Tyler, from P&G's perspective, how did that influence cost transparency and how that was going to be determined?
Yes, so cost transparency. That was very uncomfortable for us at first. And I think for most owners out there, it's, I still remember our first collaborative design session when we as a P&G team were getting together to talk about what number we actually share as our affordable cost target. And our upper management was really hesitant, and they actually wanted to reduce it by a couple $1 million just to make sure that we protected ourselves. But to show that we were fully bought into the process, if we're going to expect our trade partners to have an open book with us and to share all of their costs directly, then we need to do the same. And what's been interesting is that by being transparent with our affordable costs early on in validation phase, as we get to the end of the validation phase and are getting our target cost, if the target cost isn't below our allowable cost, then that's where we reach that go, no-go criteria. And we have actually canceled several projects at that point. So now we're canceling projects after only spending a couple $100,000 in validation phase, compared to in the past, we'd spent several tens of $1 millions and then canceled projects. So having that cost transparency really helps us with the cost certainty as we're working through the project.
Great. So Greg, how did the team identify aligned business practices, you know, as we understand that IPD requires that type of relationship?
Yeah, one of the key tenets of IPD is setting your conditions of satisfaction. You know, from the beginning of the project, as a team, the whole team, the owners, the trade partners, the vendors, the general contractors, all get together and really identify what it is, what it's going to mean to be a successful project. I mean, it can range from the typical, a safe project, on schedule, on budget, that kind of thing, to having developing long-lasting relationships to go from project to project or whatever it may be. And once you get that alignment of the whole team on what's going to be a success, it really helps to create that execution plan to really ensure that you're going to meet those conditions of satisfaction. And as you're aligning your execution plan, you really get a look and a share of best practices from all your team members. So you get to see some of what makes all your partners successful, and just that transparency of being able to see how people track their costs and how people forecast their costs or schedule or capabilities and capacities that really help all the team get better, and not just the project, but the team gets better going out after the project. So it really helps to grow through the transparency and help the project and the team members together.
Yeah. So Andy, from your perspective, was access to the owner a benefit that resulted from the conditions of satisfaction?
Absolutely, and I think it goes beyond just the one project piece, right? We've all worked together multiple times now, so we're gaining exposure to Procter & Gamble's company culture and company conditions of satisfaction over and over. But I think it really goes beyond that, the COS for a project, because we have so much more access to Tyler and Tyler's team through the validation process and all the way through construction. You know, we sit with those technical experts, we can ask questions, and that really gives us an advantage as we're trying to challenge norms, challenge P&G standards, and just drive the bar a little higher each and every project.
So building on the team's aligned business practices, trust, and transparency, you guys have found that success compounds from project to project, as Greg mentioned we were going to discuss. So Jim, how has modularization played a role in that compounding success?
So what we've done is primarily built panelization. So we're lifting our whole roof sections up at once. That has allowed us to go ahead and the first time I did it, our erector was not a fan of it. It was 35,000 square feet. It's too much. It was Southland who actually said, hey, wait, this makes sense for the overall project, and forced that issue. And Greg and Andy and their teams ultimately went ahead and forced us down that road. It was outside of the erector's comfort zone, but we powered through that, and that helped drive that.
Great. And Andy, what are some of the metrics that are associated with some of the successes?
So we've seen a lot of savings in areas that weren't necessarily what you would have thought. The first time we did this, the steel erector actually sitting in the big room, and I want to stress, if you didn't have that collaborative big room environment where everybody was working together, this wouldn't have happened. But in that big room, the steel erector said, hey, Andy, I watch your fire sprinkler guys every day. The panels go up, the joists go up, and then your guys come climb around up there and put their sprinkler mains in. Why don't you install the mains on the ground and let me hoist them up? It's something we hadn't done before, hadn't thought of. We talked through it, we figured out how to make it work in a safe way, and it was incredible. We ended up with 60% less time spent on lifts, so you talk about safety advantage for your project, and 3 times the labor productivity we expected. So a massive cost savings for the team as well. And again, that's an idea from somebody from another company. And I think it's important to Pam, that the contract did help in that case. It was an IFOA project. So that erector spent extra money to create an overall savings for the job. That wouldn't happen in a traditional delivery.
Great. So Tyler, how has a consistent core team impacted these projects?
So I'll caveat this with purchasing engagement. So internally, assuming we have the right purchasing engagement, and for those at P&G here in this audience, you know what I mean. But with the right purchasing engagement, and we're able to reuse the core team, and the same core team from project to project. And the biggest savings up front is in schedule, in that we don't have to spend 2 to 3 months going through that bid analysis and the progressive partner selection. We can just jump right in with the team and get going. And then also in the validation phase, we're not spending weeks and weeks getting to know each other and trying to educate the new partners on successes we've had in the past. Instead, we're jumping in right away, building on the successes that we've already experienced. Touching on Jim's example there, that project was the 3rd project where we'd actually panelized steel, put the fire protection and the electrical on the ground and lifted it up. And I remember the conversations vividly. The contractor was not on board at all. Eventually, it worked out great. We got this project savings. The schedule was just fine. But the point was, it still took 3 to 4 weeks of discussion with that steel erector to get them on board with the approach that we've already experienced successes with. And so that's where, when we can reuse, we try to do as much as possible.
And a consistent cost savings from a dollar standpoint, too.
Yes, I mean, I won't share overall validation costs. I think most people probably have a general idea, but for us, we're probably looking at a $200,000 to $300,000 cost savings in the validation phase, and when we can reuse versus kicking off a brand new project with new vendors.
Yeah. So Greg, how does trust play into having this consistent core team?
And so one of the points that Tyler brought up is getting through that bidding process and bid analysis, and having that trust in a team and an understanding of how this team is going to work together and their skills and their abilities. He trusts us. He knows that we're not out to take advantage of the owner to jack up the price, and he trusts us on if we say the schedule is going to be this, we've got that experience to have that trust that it is going to be what it is, and that's not just from the owner to like the general contractor, but also down to all our trade partners all along. Is that, hey, if they tell me it's going to be this and they're going to be done on this day, we've experienced it. We know that it's going to get to that point. And what that helps also to do is you've got that trust, so you don't have to worry about those little things, about making sure that somebody's going to get their little stuff done. So it allows you as a team to really focus on some of the bigger opportunities, the bigger innovations, or the different things that can make the project exceptional, not just a success. Certain things like the use of different lean tools. So if you've got a consistent team that's gone through multiple projects with pool planning, you don't have to worry about training each other and making sure that we're all up to speed on that. And we can start focusing on different things like TAC planning, or even looking at going a little further with your BIM model to integrate some schedule and phasing and that kind of thing. So really opens you up to more innovation and more pushing the project to another level.
Great. So Tyler, continuing with that consistent core team, working as a single company per se, how has that benefited collaboration?
So I'll take our current project that I'm on right now. It's a lean design build contract with Miller-Valentine, but their contract is only 20% of the total project cost. The rest of it is in our equipment vendors, equipment suppliers. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this. On our previous project where we did this at a different site, Company A was in this trailer complex, Company B in this trailer complex, Company C over here, and the only time they interacted was when they had weekly meetings together in one trailer. And even though there was different POs, different contracts in play, we wanted to make sure that the project team operated as one from the beginning. And so we started with our trailer design, our big room, everybody's set in the same trailer, and we intentionally set the equipment vendors next to our IPD team. And then next to them was the P&G engineering team, followed by our P&G operations team. But everybody in the same trailer, in the same DDS meetings in the morning, the daily direction setting meetings in the morning, all doing the pull plan, all working together. And what we found was that the equipment vendors ended up talking pretty frequently with the design build, with Miller-Valentine on constructability savings. There was even a time when their equipment arrived on site early and they didn't have staff on site to unload it. So we were talking through how to solve this problem, and Miller-Valentine said, we can help you unload the material under your supervision, of course. So as the project progressed, it was amazing the amount of collaboration that was achieved. And long story short, the equipment supplier came in 4 weeks ahead of schedule. It was a lump sum contract, so P&G didn't see any of the savings on that project. But what we did see was we were able to start up our equipment 4 weeks earlier, which had significant operational savings. So just kind of showing how operating as one team, even when it doesn't make sense, the contracts are different, can still have quite a bit of savings.
And that's a good segue into innovation. So we know that when teams work together as one, an additional benefit is that innovation comes a little bit more swiftly and more naturally. So how has innovation under this structure benefited P&G projects, Tyler?
So innovation is a fun word that's thrown around internally quite a bit. And I think when most people first hear it, they think it has to be something that is new to the world or something that is groundbreaking. But innovation can often simply be something that is new to P&G that Southland has been doing for years. When I first came into our market operations, our distribution space, I spent the first couple months going to 5 of our distribution centers. And what I found was that they were all design build, they're all leased facilities. And what I found was that each one had unique differences in design and in construction. But what was missing was somebody to put all that together into one optimized design. And I think that's what Lean IPD does, is it brings everybody early together, the engineering, the trade partners, their subs, into the validation phase early on, talking through what is that most optimal design, what is the most optimal way to install this, to purchase these materials, is there anything we can modify to improve? And so a lot of times that's where we get real innovation coming out.
Will you share some examples of some of those wonderful innovations?
Yes, I've got hours and hours of innovation examples that I could talk about. So
you got about 15 minutes.
15 minutes, yes. So I'll start with a really, really simple one, and that is with our distribution centers, they're full of racking, right? And each racking aisle has lighting above, and we as the owner set a requirement that lighting had to be in the middle of the aisles, right? But when you're looking up how to support the lighting, oftentimes you have to use a piece of unistrut or 2 pieces of unistrut to hang the light. And so when you look across a 1.5 million square foot building, that's thousands of pieces of unistrut that have to be bought, that have to be cut, have to be installed. And in reality, the lighting installer can just come to the owner and say, hey, would you mind if I shifted this over 6 inches or a foot and supported it off the joist? I can install it half the time, and you don't have to purchase all this wasted material. And as an owner, shifting a light over 6 inches is not going to impact the lighting levels on the ground. As simple as that sounds, every single one of our distribution centers operated that way, right? So And I would actually challenge you to walk into most of your manufacturing or warehouse sites, you'll probably see the very same thing. So the second one was actually our first project together 6 years ago, and we were installing a manufacturing line next to an existing building that was 55 feet tall, our standard platform design for our organization units. But the process that we were installing only required a 30-foot tall roof, and it was very temperature-controlled requirements. So we were trying to balance how to do this, and for P&G, all of our standard platform designs have a quarter and 12-inch roof slope. It's just our standard design that we've done for 10 years or so. And I still remember in our collaborative design session, Miller-Valentine, as one of their subs, had the roofing contractor in the meeting, and he said, would P&G be open to changing the roof slope to a 1 in 12, 4 times steeper than what we typically do? And at first, I was, kind of, probably not, but we went and started talking through the opportunities. Not only are you getting, much steeper slopes, so you get a faster drop to the lower elevation. We were going to see siding savings because the siding installer would eliminate a joint. So you no longer have 2 pieces of siding on top of each other, it's just 1 piece. We had structural savings, we had HVAC savings. And so after talking through it internally and as a project team, we aligned to proceed forward with that. And I think in the end, it ended up being like a $300,000 cost savings for the project. And I guess I'll do one more since we have plenty of time. The last one was continuing with the HVAC conversations. Previously, all of our units were rooftop units. So you have rooftop access, you have mezzanines, and then you have the exterior units. And as we were looking at how to get to our target cost, Southland had the idea of bring the units inside. Indoor units are obviously cheaper. We can eliminate some of the ductwork. But the issue is we didn't have the mezzanine space to put them inside. And so as the owner went back and looked at our design, worked with the engineering firm, and we actually found some very unique ways, low-cost ways of adding on mezzanines that enabled us to bring all the units indoors into the footprint. And so I think that was about a $500,000 reduction in our target cost. So a lot of examples, but I know that others are excited to share theirs as well.
Yeah, so to very crudely round that out, just challenging P&G standards.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's great. So Jason, bringing you into the conversation, what are some examples of how the team created some innovative solutions from the structural perspective?
So the first example I have is, it yielded a capital savings of $14 a square foot across the structure. And the structure was delivered 15% ahead of schedule. And how we did this is Lean IPD has offered us, creates an environment that allows us to start collaborating. Tyler had grabbed me, we walked through an existing facility. Not only did I have Tyler, but I had Southland designers, trade contractors, I had SteelFab there, I had some erectors, and we were taking a look at things. And we could talk about what was going well, what was not going so well, maybe some improvements we could make with our expansion we were doing. So we took that, and we started designing around that, which really reduced tonnage and pieces. We also, with Southland, was able to get instant access to prefabricated pipe racks. And we were able to start looking at fire mains, and we started mapping all the hangar locations out. We had their engineers there with reactions for us, and we started putting that all in the documents. And this is significant because we could design that structure around the specific needs for that facility. So it greatly reduced what we would call load allowances, and it eliminated contingencies completely from the project. And so that was huge. From a process flow standpoint, since we had SteelFab coming out of the first CDS session, we asked them, hey, what kind of connections do you want to do? They submitted all the connections already with calculations, shears, so we knew exactly what they wanted to see. So now we didn't have to reproduce it. All we needed to do is give them loads. So now we're not drawing it. We're not issuing drawings for those pieces. And that relationship continued to grow where 5 projects downstream, they're submitting me shop drawings before we've actually issued construction documents. We're reviewing them and issuing them the same day our construction documents go out. And the quality of their shop drawings is, on average, better than we would see during a design bid build where we're issuing a set for bid and then they're taking that. So that reduces schedule significantly. So that's a huge savings in how we attain that $14 a square foot and $1.50 actually for the joists alone.
So piggybacking onto that, first project out there, we struggled with schedule because we were waiting for those loads. Second project, not all of these team members, but second one of those projects, we over-designed the joist, right, so that we can go ahead and not do that. And then Jason and his team got involved, and that's where, but it came from Southland by being able to go ahead and say, here's where the hangars are going to need to go, this is what our load's going to be, and start driving that to minimize what that looked like. The second part that Jason didn't touch on was the portal frames, right? We were tying into a pre-engineered metal building. It was a struggle, and we've continued to do that on that campus through the efforts of the team. Tyler primarily driving it with and chasing that down. Jason and his team, we reduced those openings to half of what we originally had anticipated, right? And minimized the amount of impact to existing operations on the other side of that wall.
So building into the second example, second project coming along, we took everything we learned from that project and we began to look, okay, we focused on fabrication and eliminating pieces and quantity of members. So let's look at labor. We focused on labor and how the buildings come together. So that translated into this panelization. We went to an all bolted, which we hadn't done before, including bridging. We continued to put infrastructure, such as fire protection inside that. So we're panelizing that and we're erecting that, and it's fully bolted, and the goal was to eliminate welding completely from the project. The other thing we looked at with the fabricator and director is how to simplify or enhance our detailing around the perimeter of the building so it goes together quickly. What can we prefab with all the structure supporting IMP and the various components around there, around the perimeter of the building. So that leaded downstream to significant savings. And the focus was really on labor there, as well as process and flow. So another piece of that puzzle was how we packaged the fabrication and sequencing, including reviewing the shop drawings in a sequence that eliminated or created efficiencies in the schedule. And that project, we were able to build off and have, it's a $19 savings per square foot for structure and foundations of that. It was about $13 we saved on top of the previous project. And that project came in about 15% ahead of schedule for that example.
So as all of you are well aware, steel goes up very fast, detailing not so much, right? And we usually tend to struggle by trying to get out, and by managing that up front and eliminating that field welding. We always seem to be up there in February erecting steel for whatever reason, which is always its own set of challenges. That helped immensely. Jason and his team, along with our erector and our exterior skin contractor, helped streamline some of those perimeter details immensely, right? That went ahead and reduced some of the complexity of what we had done before and continue to refine and refine and refine those details.
So along comes project 3. And so we're beginning to innovate and beginning to look for deeper into our structural design and seeing, hey, maybe things that we should be doing that we haven't done yet. So we begin to look at the prefabrication again more enhanced around the perimeter. But we're also now looking at, and this is really IPD non-adversarial, Southland and us start talking, and I start giving suggestions to Southland of, hey, you got these 4 large semi-truck trailer units on the roof over here. You know, we got 1,000 foot of building, a lot of snow drift. Could we take them and move them 300 feet down? And that's a conversation that that's structural, kind of get blown off. But Lauren with Southland looked at it and we started going. She's like, yeah, I can rotate those, and yeah, I can move those, and maybe we can panelize the additional 300 feet of piping. And then so the benefit to us was we eliminated 100,000 pounds of snow drifting off the building by doing that. But then the secondary thing came back. She came back and indicated, oh, well, if we put it there due to expansion in future, we only need 2 of these units now. So what initial conversation between mechanical and structural, we ended up massive savings, 4 units to 2, 100,000 pounds of snow off the roof. And really that facility came together very well. It was $10 a square foot savings. The interesting thing though is it was delivered on schedule, not ahead of schedule, but at 60% of the target labor to put that building together. So it was huge, huge. Savings.
What Jason left out was that happened during COVID. And that was what drove some of those decisions, right? And helped shape what we needed to do. And by us having our team together and building that, we're operating as one cohesive unit, and we're operating as what's best for the project, we're able to go ahead and realize some of those savings.
So now coming around to the 4th example we have. COVID's underway. The projects have paused a little bit after Borderland. And so because of our relationships that had, thank you. Because of our relationships that we have here though, we began to work together because joist at that point became a logistical nightmare. You know, if you needed joist, 12 months, 16 months we were hearing. Prices were escalating all over the board. So how do we compete? So we started looking together as companies beyond P&G into other markets, and we started looking at technology and how to put old technology together in a very efficient way, different, to compete with joist, mainly to get the erection started of the building much quicker, and how to be price competitive for joist systems. And we worked at that for probably 4 to 6 months, and project 4 comes around. And we utilized castellated beams. That's the old technology. And so P&G reaped benefits from a life cycle of innovation between our companies that they created by lean IPD and these relationships that have been built. And now they're reaping the benefit on project 4 because now we eliminated joist. It was a very cost-effective solution using castellated beams, and we put it together in a way that was very cost-effective and kept the project way ahead of schedule. And the second thing it did is castellated. We could still put fire mains up in the castellation, save clear height, reduce congestion for the process. The other thing we utilize a little different is we use column sleeves. So a different process, old technology again, but it built safety around the site because there was no fall hazards. The second thing it did was it eliminated the need for people to come back and fill those holes around the columns in with concrete. So it worked out very well and had a significant impact to schedule, certainly. And the facility was erected, actually, at that point. It was trending 7% ahead, cost savings.
So Jason mentions column sleeves, and again, lead times of steel led to that, right? Every other project we've done together, we have steel goes up, slab on grade goes in after the fact. Because of structural steel lead times, that led us to pouring slab on grade first, which allowed us to go ahead and pour all of it together without boxing out for the diamonds. It's safer. It's become an area of focus in the southeast for OSHA in regard to fall protection around there. So it was the right solution for that project, and we were able to facilitate that because we talk to one another regularly. The C-beams conversation is definitely something we've looked at again here recently with regard to just with the processing, right? And what we've done is on that particular project, there were a lot of processes. It was a new process for P&G. There was a lot of a learning curve, not different than what we had done previously on some other projects. And by having C-beams there, we were fortunate on some of the stuff that came out afterwards from a reinforcing standpoint.
So related to that last example, Tyler, with some of the market challenges that you guys experienced, how would those have been treated under a traditional delivery model?
Let me start by saying that Jason was rattling off the projects. Those are across multiple organization units within P&G. A couple of them are at the same site, but like for me, I didn't even know about a lot of these until until a couple months ago. So that's the exciting thing for me, is seeing the learnings across the company that we started 6 years ago. But in terms of your question, I think this was touched on yesterday, that we as the owner aren't fully aware of what's going on in the market in terms of material cost, material timing, and everything. And so one of the benefits, in a traditional approach, we have our standard, this is what we want. It gets designed, it gets bid out, and then we find out, oh, the lead time is this, or asphalt's more expensive than concrete, and then we have to go through and value engineer everything, right? And so the benefit of this approach is that with everybody being involved early on, we can understand, maybe there is a certain fixture type or a certain material type that is coming in cheaper, and we can base our design from that early on. And so that's one of the benefits of this. Is the other one is, I guess, also with early purchase. So if we're seeing some of the market trends, especially with COVID, we saw electrical prices were going up. We made a conscious effort to really focus on our wiring, how much wiring we're going to need for our process. And we purchased that 6 months earlier than we needed to, because we saw the pricing was going up. But we wouldn't necessarily have known that without the electrical vendor there to give us the pricing they were seeing.
Andy, do you have a couple more examples to share?
Sure. So it's always fun to talk about the big flashy examples. And on this project, big 50-foot long sections of massive ductwork that the steel erector was able to hoist into place for us, or multi-tiered, multi-system pipe racks. But I want to go back to something I said earlier, and Tyler mentioned as well, about challenging norms and challenging standards, and just the access to the owner and the little innovations around talking about air change rates, relative humidity, and temperature bands within spaces. And those don't sound like big, sexy innovations, but those little things add up. They change system sizing, and ultimately they drive a lot of cost out of the job. So sometimes those little things, you got to keep your eye on those as well.
So these examples that you guys have given so far have been pretty technical in nature. Greg, how are you seeing innovation related to cost tracking, scheduling, and other soft items?
Yeah, like I say, innovation isn't just technical stuff, and I think as Tyler mentioned first, it's not just groundbreaking, new ideas. It's what's new to one company may be old hat to another company. And as we get very comfortable and build those relationships, you understand everybody's strengths and weaknesses and capabilities that really help you to innovate. And for one example, like we were doing some work out of town down in West Virginia, and the role of safety managers, typically your GC or CM role to fill, and we had trouble staffing it. I mean, being out of town, we just didn't have the right people to do it. And Southland and our electrical contractor stood up and said, "Hey, we got the resources available. Let us help fill this." And that was on our first project on the site, and it really, having them being a local contractor that could fill that role created that consistent team going forward, where all the craft in the field know the safety team. They know what's expected of them. They know how everybody's going to react together, and really creates a very, very collaborative teamwork atmosphere where everybody's very, very consistent and happy with how that's going to go. And that also builds into not just on the field, but in how we do some of the work with sourcing. Like on a lot of these projects, we would have a single source for equipment rental. We'd have one of the trade partners that would rent all of the equipment. So how many times have you gone out to a project and you see 50 scissor lifts and only 3 of them have people on them? And so we looked at it as, hey, gosh, we can save a ton of money of moving the scissor lifts in and out and the downtime that's sitting there by bringing it all together and really coordinating and working through that management to reduce the amount of equipment on a site. And one final example is your cost forecasting. As a team, that's one of the most important things that you're going to do. It's not necessarily cost tracking; it's forecasting, being able to see what's coming down the pike. And if you're starting together as a team from the beginning, you can start to set up those cost forecasting models from your original estimates through your contracting, through how you let out your subcontracts, your trade partners, and how you actually code cost in the field, so that you can identify if you're seeing some overruns, you're seeing some underruns. You can see where there's a problem that's going to be happening early on to be able to address it quickly. And as a team, we'll set up those cost reviews. I mean, on most of our projects, we're going to sit as a team and review cost probably twice a month. And so you can really see those trends quickly. And as a team, you can call each other out on it and say, hey, something's going on here. How are we going to fix it? How can we help to fix this? And really just builds into that whole innovation of setting up different ways to execute your project, not just technically, but how you work together.
Great. So we've discussed IPD successes and benefits stemming from the team building, the consistent core team, and innovation perspectives. So Tyler, based on these successes moving forward, how is P&G going to continue evolving in its projects?
Yeah, so for P&G internally, we've made a significant effort here recently, just in upskilling our lean IPD within the company. So we recently deployed a 3-part training consisting of roughly 30 hours of material. 1 part's on general lean IPD, 1 part is how to use lean IPD on small projects, and 1 is how to use it on large projects. And for us, the small projects is kind of those AE site type projects that are under $1 million. So that was 1 big effort. The second one is that we now require lean IPD as part of our engineering career systems. So new engineers to the company, usually at least 6 months, go through a week-long training, and lean IPD is taught every day, going through the whole process, validation, execution, pull planning, things like that. Also, within our internal certification process, project management certification, cost certification, construction management certification, those trainings are required to get that certification. So you have to have knowledge of lean IPD. And then finally, we've established a team internally of lean IPD experts, some people from purchasing, people from cost engineering, project management, technical scope. And that team of experts really goes and helps projects as they're struggling through, or even just getting kicked off with how to work with lean and how to work with it the right way.
Awesome. And Andy, what is Southland doing moving forward to implement IPD principles in its planning and project processes?
There's 2 things I think I want to mention. First, we're being very deliberate now about trying to grow more lean leaders within our organization. That might mean getting the right people onto the right projects, getting them exposure earlier in their career, getting them the tools that they need, and I think most importantly, showing them the right behaviors for these lean IPD projects, because that's what it really comes down to, right? The tools don't mean anything if you don't have the behaviors. So getting those people the exposure. The other thing I think we're doing and doing more of is sharing lessons learned across our organization when we have a consistent customer like Procter & Gamble that we're working with over and over. Tyler mentioned that not all those projects we've talked about are with the same business units. They're not within the same business units of my company either. So making sure that we're sharing our lessons around the country so that P&G is getting a consistent experience and seeing a consistent Southland no matter where the project may be.
And Jason, will you share how THP Limited is changing some of its processes based on the IPD successes?
Yes, so lean IPD projects is one of our core projects for our industrial manufacturing industry. It's one of our 3. But we last year made the decision that regardless of the delivery system, design, bid, build, we would utilize lean IPD principles and tools and structures across all of those. Now I realize lean IPD, IFOA, ideal state, we're not going to get there with a design, bid, build project, but there are things we can do internally to help reduce risk, mitigate those risks, reduce those risks, and build certainty into our project delivery. And what we noticed as we did it, and as the year went on, we had a design bid build, and our consultant, we were a sub to a mechanical company, they started emulating the things we were doing because they saw how it was working for our team. And that is really our goal for THP and ourselves, is to better the profession and project delivery because it betters our position. And so this year we've decided we have 5 other industries. We on the structural engineering services are going to start pushing that across other industries within THP to, again, build certainty and mitigate those risks on our project delivery.
Thank you. So as we begin to close, Andy, you said that you had some final remarks that you'd like to share about the process.
Yeah, thanks, Pam. So I feel really fortunate that I've been working almost exclusively on collaboratively delivered IPD projects for over a decade now, which is kind of crazy to think about, but it's been a decade. And the very first IPD project I was a part of the owner pulled me aside during validation and said, you're going to be amazed what can happen when everybody on a project team can play offense together. Right? Think about on your job site how often you're playing defense against somebody else in the room instead of playing offense to move the job forward. And he was absolutely right. And just moving forward, it's the only way I want to work. I think it's more fun, it's more enjoyable, it's less stressful, and I really believe we're providing, as a team, better outcomes for our customers.
Great, thank you. And Tyler, anything to add?
Yeah, ditto. No. So
That's it, just ditto, done.
yeah, ditto. Yeah, for me, I've been pretty vocal internally for P&G that the NIPD projects are the only kind of projects that I want to work on. And I think for those that have worked on a Lean IPD project and worked on it the right way, caveat there, the right way, where you really bought into the process and you really believe that it's going to work, once you experience the collaboration, the networking, the team building, the innovation, it's really hard to go back to a different way of working. And I look at our group here. Our first project was 6 years ago. The project they did 4 years ago. And I really haven't worked with, other than Miller-Valentine, I haven't worked with the others. But yet, we still, hopefully you can see our collaboration and the way we respect each other, the relationships build on. And what's exciting for me to see is that what we started 6 years ago is that it's really exciting to see these trade partners working on other projects in other organization units within P&G across the country. I kind of lost count on how many projects, but I think there's 6 or 7 or 8 sites that we have projects where one of these partners are on the project team. So,
Thank you. And thanks for your insight, everyone, regarding this delivery method. Really appreciate it. A lot of owners and a lot of AEC partners hear about IPD and the concept of it, but I like the fact that we were able to kind of dig into it and give some practical examples today. And with that, we wanted to leave a lot of time for Q&A, so I'd like to open that up, Greg, if you are amenable.
Thanks, gang, and thanks, Pam. Wasn't that interesting? Let's show our appreciation for their openness and transparency on this. And just like the last presentation, I've probably got 3 dozen questions here. We'll not have time, and I'll try to hit the ones which repeat and are most common. How did you handle and manage disagreement, and did that ever become lively? How did you resolve conflict on a project like this? Again, these aren't addressed to any particular person, so whoever wants to take a swing at the pitch, go for it.
yeah, so I'll start. And I think for me, it's hard to answer because one of the things I was actually thinking about on some of the presentations earlier is that you tend not to remember the conflict as much because you work through it very quickly. And so you end up focusing more on the successes. And I'm trying to remember, like on our current project, if we've had any conflict.
There's conflict.
I meant me and Greg. I didn't know.
No, it's healthy conflict, though, right? I mean, I think the key is we talked earlier about trust, right, and that foundation. And it's a lot easier to have trust. When you have that trusting relationship because you've built the team correctly, you can really duke it out in the big room and know that at the end of the day, you're going to go home and you're still friends. It's about the project, not the person.
Yeah. I think the closest thing was the concrete truck that hit the overhead door. That caused a little bit of conflict, but able to be resolved. I mean, we're as a team together. If there is conflict, we've like Andy said, we've grown those relationships and that trust that we know we're going to work together to figure it out. I mean, we got to figure it out as a team. It's all on us. It's not on the owner. It's not on the GC. Everybody's going to figure it out together.
Were there any challenges in procurement or contracting or sourcing that had to be brought up to snuff with the IPD culture and value?
I guess I'll hit that a little bit. It is, so we see a core team here. There's obviously a lot more trade partners than what you'll see here that come into an IPD team. And it does take, it's a newer concept out there. There's a lot of trade partners that that haven't been exposed to it. They may tell you they've been in a lean project or something, a collaborative project, but it's a whole different world once you get into a true, IPD with an IFOA contract. And so like that beginning time frame of getting a training together for everybody. I mean, as you bring partners in, you're going to have to train everybody. You're going to have to learn everybody's weaknesses, their experiences, and try and set up some training for the team that's going to gonna really build into a strong relationship. And there's times where you'll find a trade partner that they don't quite fit, and that's okay. It's a different model. It's a different model to on how to do things, and sometimes you got to identify that, and either you cut losses with them or you help to train them and bring them up to speed to really be an asset to the team.
Any other comments from the others at all on that point?
All right, knock that one out.
We won't belabor it. It was mentioned that the trade partners varied from project to project. Some were on all the projects, but not all. How did you manage to maintain the culture of innovation while team members varied?
Team members within the same court? Or
What the
same
question asks, yeah.
Different companies on different jobs.
For companies, okay.
Do you want to take that one, Tyler?
So the ones that I've been involved in, typically we've been able to keep a couple of the key trade partners, and we might bring in someone new. And so, the example that Jim touched on earlier, it was a new steel erector. The previous steel erector, we had some issues. Like Greg said, just it wasn't a good fit. So we brought in a new steel erector, but we had the other core people the same. And so that was where we were able to work with them. And once I think they saw the benefits, once they saw the communication and collaboration, I think they were bought in. And so I would say that's one example.
I think P&G does a great job too at the end of our projects capturing those lessons learned. And then all of our individual companies have those in our pockets as well. So when we move forward to the next job, we can share them with the other team members and to your point, Greg, coach up people who are new.
A basic tenet of IPD is lead with respect. To that end, were the payment terms adjusted?
Tyler?
I'd have to talk with our purchasing organization.
Gosh, purchasing's gotten dumped on here the last few hours.
The answer is no.
The answer is no, yeah.
The answer's no.
But somebody mentioned yesterday the supply chain financing. There are different opportunities that we've worked through, and again, it comes down to a team. You got to have those conversations up front as people are coming into a team of, here's what to expect, and we got to figure that out. And if it can't work, then we'll find some way around it.
The one thing, though, Greg, was no retainage. So that's huge from an overall standpoint, right? So that's the one thing, the net terms have changed and based on what P&G standards are, but no retainage is a big deal.
Yeah.
You mentioned that your equipment suppliers were on site with you in the big room. What type of contract did you have with those suppliers, and how did you get them in there early? And how early is early for equipment design? So
it was a lump sum contract. And the fun thing for me was we had just done the same project at another site. Watch what I say, but the equipment vendor didn't really enjoy working with P&G. So when they were coming to our project, and I spent quite a bit of time at that site starting to build that relationship early, and would often just show them respect, have a conversation, what worked well, what didn't go well. And then as we brought them on site, I remember having the conversation with the foreman, and I love foremen, right? Because that's where the work really gets done. And so just talking to them and understanding, how can we work well together? You're the one who's here every day. His upper management, who was not even in the U.S., really did not want them to be involved with us. But by coming into our daily direction setting meetings, by doing the pull plan with us, they started to see the value. And then after 2 or 3 weeks, they were fully bought in. That example I gave earlier was a true example about helping unload the truck. They had trucks of equipment sitting there, but no one to unload it. And I think it took like 3 hours for our team. But for us to do that for them, there was no change order. There wasn't a here's your bill. We just did it, and I think that really helped to bring them up.
Are any of you comfortable with sharing how your risk profiles and profitability numbers have been affected by repeat IPD engagements?
I think I won't get into details, but obviously, every project that I've been involved in with a similar team here has gotten better. I mean, they're always continuously. They're always profitable. As when you set up an IFOA, there's a profit pool that gets shared cost savings that go back to the team from to the IFOA partners down to the trade partners, the risk reward partners, and on every one I've done, we've given back additional profit to our trade partners, and whether it's a little or a lot, it's something, and it means you're getting a little bit more, and it means that you're going in the right direction.
Other thoughts?
As for our firm, IPD is our most profitable division of industrial manufacturing. Really? Consistently, yes. And I think a lot of it deals with when I'm, design bid build or even design build to some extent. It's very adversarial. We're an IPD. Everyone realizes, our core partners, even on this stage, if I choose to be resistant because it's going to be an extra 40 hours this week for me, and it's going to cost, Southland more, I'm paying for that out of my profit. Mm-hmm. So that puts everyone on an even playing field of, hey, we're all going to pay for it. How are we going to generate that savings or pay the least amount? And even the owner benefits from that. Mm-hmm. So we all benefit, and that really reduces our risk. The other thing with, right now everyone's so busy, resources are tight, a lot going on in the world. This relationship, we're watching over one another's companies. As new people come on, so we're training them, everyone has new people, and we're just not mentoring our own, we're also watching over the other companies up here. And so that reduces that risk on us to deliver that project. Mm-hmm. It really adds certainty into it, and that's comforting.
Indeed. To the owner, what was the status of design when you went into the validation phase?
Not very much. So, for the most part, we have enough to say that we have a project. We have some layouts, some conceptual layouts. We probably have spent maybe $30,000 to $50,000 in front-end engineering. It's enough to put obviously a bid package together so that we can do our partner selection. But even then, on my current design bid project, we bid it out a couple years ago, but it was only a couple pages of scope that was actually as part of the bid package. So, and that's the point, I think, is we don't want to come in with a lot of the work already done, because then it takes away, it already provides a hindrance for the partners as they come in. If we're already coming in saying we have to have this, 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 and this, now they don't feel comfortable, saying something as simple as, if you moved this way, we could, if you move the HVAC unit a couple hundred feet, we can save, all this money. And so, and then also for the validation phase, a lot of times for me, I will come in with some key problems we're trying to solve. So, early on with us, we had some complexity as West Virginia with soil conditions and micropiles, and we were looking at our column spans. And so I posed it to the group. We could eliminate these columns, but it's going to have this impact to the foundations, or we could keep them in. And that was something that we worked together to optimize. The roof slope was another big one. That kind of these problems that we came in that we're okay, but I would like your expertise on it.
As a contractor who has not experienced an IPD project yet, well, how do you get the customer or the owner bought into this type of project delivery system? What did it take, for example, Tyler at Procter & Gamble to move to the IPD culture and the IPD, to embrace it? How did you overcome what was in order to see what could be?
I don't know if I can speak for the whole company, but for me, I had experienced so much of change, and I was just coming off a project that ended up, I don't even know where it ended up, but it was $10 million over our estimated total cost. It was bad. But it was so much of that. We had a design, we bid it out, it came back, it was way too high, we would spend time going through it, and how can we optimize it? And that was just the first package, that was the foundation package. Then we had the steel package, and it came in too high, and then we go through, and so for me, it was like, why can't we get the people that are installing it just input into the design so that we don't have all this waste? And so when I first heard about Lean IPD being piloted, as soon as that project ended, I wanted on board to try it out. And it just makes sense, right? And I think one of the breakout sessions earlier kind of touched on this as well. If you can just involve me up front, we can help with the specifications, we can help with the design and optimize it.
So you mentioned not speaking obviously for the whole company, and by the way, I think Mike Stahn was the early adopter, and he got out the torch and led the way across the hill, retired now, but very capable leader on this concept. How does P&G continue to find new partners in order to maintain a competitive environment?
You want to touch on that from like current projects?
Yeah, we can do that. We still compete for these projects. It's not a,
Oh, yeah.
they don't necessarily just give us these projects anymore. I mean, like Tyler mentioned you still got to get alignment from purchasing. So there is still a competitive advantage or a competition or a bid to be able to get these projects. And so, we still got to be at the top of our game. We still got to be approaching it like it's not our project from the beginning. And we got to bring a team together to show the advantages of here's what it is and here's how we're going to get there. The advantages of the IPD aren't, okay, you go out and you beat the streets down to get the lowest number and throw it in there and you execute on that. Because that always leads to change order. Something's different, something's wrong. Price always goes up, schedule goes longer, everything just goes bad. So when you have a team that has some proven experience, you're buying that team, you're buying that experience, not necessarily the low dollar. And that's where that ends up to a better project for P&G at the end, because they're going to get they're going to have more certainty in the cost, more certainty in the schedule, more certainty in the execution of the job.
Yeah, I can just, the reason I mentioned or had Greg take that one is he's working on a couple of different projects where we do have new partners that they haven't worked with before. Where Miller-Valentine's the only lean IPD expert on the team, and they're helping provide that coaching. But he's right. I mean, we've all worked together, but we still, with purchasing, we bid out the work, and we still go through partner selection just like anybody. It's typically 3, 4, 5 companies are in the bid process. So it's not like the companies are guaranteed. It does obviously provide an advantage, but it's not always guaranteed.
One more question. Have you pre-qualified trade partners for IPD projects so that you're assured that those you're hiring are a good fit and avoid a misfit? It's obvious you folks are a high-performing work team. How did you pre-qualify to assure that in the future? Or how do you pre-qualify?
So before we were on the team for the first time, P&G came to our office, walked around and talked to us, came to our fab shop, walked around, looked at our capabilities, talked to our workers, went to other job sites where we were a part of. We had a very elaborate, complex interview process. To your point, we haven't been handed any of this work, and I think to get there, you guys have done a great job doing your due diligence and really spending the time up front to do your homework.
And part of the process is also a progressive selection. As you start to set up a team, P&G will select, I think the first job selected Southwood first. They helped select us. Then as part of that team, we help select electrical contractor and down the line. So as your team grows, everybody is really involved in that selection process of your next partner to have a buy-in. It gets to the point where if you do have something that goes wrong, it's not he's your contractor and it's your fault. It's as a team, we all selected him and we're all bought in to make it a success.
Mike Stahn, just as an anecdote, he worked with Al Schwarzkopf here on our Lean IPD committee and was an early adopter and proponent of this form of doing business. But if you all had to start over, if you're talking to folks who are not quite adept at this, what's your best resources? What would you advise a contractor and owner who wants to do a deeper dive into this concept? Where would they go? What do they do? Who do they talk to? Where are the resources?
Go talk to another owner who's already done it, right? Or go talk to a peer company if you're a trade partner who's already done it and just hear them out.
And there are organizations, I think LCI is here. They're a great resource to get some input. But yeah, the best is to talk to somebody that's done it.
Well, that was one of the key things you mentioned, Mike Stahn. Typically when we try something new, we want to P&G-ize it. We want to make it our own, right? And I know Mike was very conscious about not changing the process, right? This is the process we're going to follow. This is the industry standard, LCI. This is what we're going to do. And so that's what we've tried to do. So a lot of our information, the books on our desks are those, target value design, things like that.
Great. Pam, your team did fantastic. We did not get through all the questions, so these folks will be around during the break. And one observation I had is, VUCA, by both definitions, is expressed and experienced here. There was uncertainty, there was complexity, there was ambiguity in some places, and volatility, but yet at the same time, because of the collaboration, because of the trust, because of the process that worked, I saw velocity, unity, collaboration, and agility, like dealing with the snow accumulations on the roof and things like that. So you've done a great job of meeting both definitions of VUCA. And with that, let's excuse our team with our appreciation. Thank you, Pam and team.